Hey guys, this is Coach Lowe, and we are going to look at some equations where we're going to solve linear equations and inequalities. And this will be a little bit of a review. It is Algebra 1, but we're just beginning our geometry year. And so this is where we're going to start. Make sure you have your Chromebook out and open to your notebook. Go ahead and title this and make sure that you remember that you can stop this video at any time. You can back it up if you need, if you miss something. You can put notes in the margin of your notebook so that you can ask me questions when you get back, or actually I'll be able to see it before you even come back to class. But that way it'll be fresh on your memory when you come back in. We want to make sure that you understand everything that we talk about. That way you can apply them when you get back to class. All right, so let's look at steps to solve. All right, number one, we are going to clean up. So we will clean up the equation, and we'll look at both sides of the equation, and there should be some things on both sides. So we'll look to clean up both sides of that equation. Look for parentheses where we have to use distributive property or like terms. Number two, we want to isolate the variable. All right, so isolating the variable means that we will get all of our variables or letters to one side, and I usually take them left. So variables to one side like x, and then numbers to the other side. See if I, there it is. All right, so we want to move letters to the left, numbers to the right. Now, you don't always have to do that. That's just something that I kind of like to do. All right, so number three, and by the way, isolating the variable means we will be adding or subtracting numbers to get them across that equal sign. So we'll do the opposite to get them across. We want to zero them out on one side and get them over to the other side. All right, number three, we want to solve for the variable. So we'll look at the number that's in front of the variable, and we will see what we need to multiply or divide to get it isolated, to get it by itself. So we will be multiplying or dividing, depending on what we see with the equation. All right, so let's move on to number four. And number four, we're going to check our work. And you can do this quick check with your calculator. We can do it mentally, lots of different ways to check. All right, so let's try some problems. So we're going to start out with some pretty basic ones, which you probably did in pre-algebra, but that's okay. Kind of practicing on taking notes and also just a little bit of review. All right, so let's move on and start with example number one. So x plus 8 equals -5. All right, so remember, we want to isolate the variable. Well, first thing we need to look, do we need to clean up? Do I have like terms here? No. Do I have like terms here? No. So there's really no cleanup on that. Step number two says isolate the variable. So I want all of the numbers to the left, which I have only one variable here, excuse me, letters. I have only one variable here, so variables to the left, it's already here. I want numbers to the right. So this 8 needs to go. I want to do the opposite, so I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. All right, so when I subtract 8 from both sides, this becomes 0 because positive 8 minus 8 is 0. And then notice these signs are alike, so I can add my numbers and then stick the negative sign on the outside. Remember, the reason you can do that is I'm starting at -5. And then I'm subtracting 8, or I'm adding a -8. I know you guys have done that. So that means I continue to move on the number line in the same direction. Well, moving in that same direction means if I go 8 more spaces this way, I'm going to end up at -13. So just a little reminder with the number line. All right, so x equals -13. All right, so I told you last step was to check. By the way, we didn't have to divide or multiply because the number in front of x here is a 1. So that last, or the step number 3, we didn't have to do. All right, so check. I go back to my original equation and I plug in my answer for x. Where x is, I put negative 13. So I have negative 13 plus 8 I love it when that happens. Equals negative 5. So the question is, will this side end up being negative 5? And it does, because negative 13 and a positive 8 is a negative 5. When my signs are opposite, I subtract them and take the sign of the larger number. It's floating. It's like haunted here. All right, so this does check. Negative 5 is equal to negative 5. So we can move on to problem number 2. And we're going to do one more together, and then I'm going to let you try some without me. So problem number 2 says the opposite of C, we don't read that as negative C, we read that as the opposite of C, divided by 6 equals 8. All right, so step number 1 is to clean up both sides. I really don't have anything to clean up. Step number 2, get the letters on one side, numbers to the other. By adding or subtracting, nope, can't really do that either. Now we want to isolate the variable. So I need this C over here all by itself, but I have a negative sign and then divided by 6. Remember, I want to do the opposite. So when I read this and I say the opposite of C, I want to get rid of that negative sign, divided by 6, the opposite of dividing by 6 would be multiplying by 6. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. But remember, I also want to get rid of this negative. How do I get rid of a negative? Exactly. Multiply by a negative. Negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 6. And I'm going to go ahead and slide this over 1 since we're dealing with fractions. The 6's will cancel, and then remember there was a negative here, and those will cancel. Negative multiplied by a negative makes a positive. So C equals negative 48. All right, quick check here. If you want to do this mentally, the opposite of a negative 48 divided by 6 equals negative 6. Or excuse me, equals 8. Sorry. So go back to the original, the green up here, and we'll write that down. So the opposite of C, which we said was negative 48, divided by 6 should be equal to 8. So multiply those two negatives together, that makes a positive. And then 48 divided by 6 is 8. So this checks. We are in good shape here. All right, a couple of problems for you to try. Number 3. Let's try 3 times d minus 7 equals 6. And this is a negative 3, by the way. My negative didn't come out here. So negative 3 times d minus 7 equals 6. I'll give you a hint on this one. You're going to have to clean up. Do you see the parentheses right here? You're going to have to clean up this guy. So you're going to have to multiply the negative 3 through. Be careful multiplying. Go ahead and pause the video and try that problem out. All right, now that you're back and you've tried the problem, let's go ahead and multiply this negative 3 through to both. So negative 3 times d is a negative 3d. And negative 3 times a negative 7 is a positive 21. And that's equal to 6. So notice the negative sign changed the signs of everything in here. This was a positive d, now it's negative. This was minus 7, now it's plus 21. So these signs should change. All right. So now we are to step number 2, isolate the variable. So I have d on this side, but there's some numbers added. So I want to subtract 21 from both sides. So here's my equal sign. I want to subtract 21 from both sides. So on the left side, I have negative 3d, and plus 21 minus 21 is 0. And on the right side, I have 6 minus 21. 6 minus 21 is a negative 15. My signs are opposite, so I subtract. All right, now I'm going to divide both sides by -3. So D is 5. Plugging this back into check, 5 minus 7 is -2. -3 times -2 is a +6, so we can mentally check that one. All right, last one on this, and then we'll look at inequalities. And you can pause the video once I write this down and try this yourself. So 9n plus 4 equals 5n plus 18. All right, go ahead and pause the video and try that out. Okay, now that you're back, we look at cleaning up both sides. There's nothing to clean up, but I see that I have variables on the right side. I need to move them left. I have numbers on the left side, need to move them right. So I'm going to start by subtracting 5n from both sides. All right, so when I do that on the left side, 9n minus 5n is 4n. I didn't do anything with a +4. 5n minus 5n is 0, so that leaves me with a +18. All right, now I need to move the 4. So it says +4, so I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. Subtracting 4 from both sides leaves me 4n on the left side and 14 on the right side. My last step is to get n by itself. This says 4 times n, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So n equals 14 over 4, which will reduce if I divide top and bottom by 2. That will reduce to 7/2. All right, plugging that back in and check. You can plug in 3.5 and do this on your calculator if you want to. It's totally fine with me. Do a quick check. So 9 times 3.5 plus 4 is equal to 5 times 3.5 plus 18. And you should get the same number on both sides on that. Sorry, I keep hitting the button on my pencil and it's just going crazy. All right, last thing, promise, linear inequalities. All right, so let's go to a new page. Same steps on linear inequalities except step number 3. When we solve for the variable, red flag moment. When we multiply or divide by a negative number. Multiplying or dividing by a negative number causes the inequality to reverse directions. All right, so inequalities, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. If you need to pause the video, back it up, write out next to those what they mean, please do so. All right, so let's try a little example here. So let's go with 4x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 8x minus 10. Okay, so from here, let's check out what we have. We have things on both sides. We don't have any cleanup to do, but we have x's on both sides. We have numbers on both sides. So let's move this 8x over by subtracting 8x from both sides. So when I do that, 4x minus 8x is a negative 4x, plus 2 is greater than or equal to negative 10. Now, I still need to move the 2 over. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So now negative 4x, negative 4x, it's just going crazy here, is greater than or equal to negative 12. All right, so last step. I want to get x by itself, so I need to divide by a negative 4. Lights, bells, whistles, woo, 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 sirens. We just divided by a negative number, so red flag moment. Inequality will now reverse directions. So this is going to reverse directions. So now I have negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1x. So I have x is less than or equal to 3. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. This is Coach Lowe, and I'm out.